This thrilling story begins by showing a future where the Earth is covered in water as far as the eye can see. It was the moment when the temperature on Earth had risen drastically, causing massive glaciers to melt completely. Every country and continent had drowned, leaving no land untouched. Even the tallest mountains were swallowed up by the sea. Because of this, a huge portion of Earth's population had perished, but the survivors learned how to adapt and live in these harsh conditions. People formed groups and built large floating wooden cities on the water where they lived together, each community separated by distance. Their lifestyle was shocking, but survival taught them unique techniques. In the middle of the ocean, we see a boat with a man known as the Mariner. He clearly knew a lot about survival, carrying useful supplies and even growing his own plants for fruits. For water, he had a container where he collected urine, poured it into a small device, and it transformed into clean drinking water, revealing the device was a filtration system. Despite being surrounded by endless water, it wasn't safe to drink since the salty seawater could make people seriously ill. The Mariner understood exactly what to do to survive. Soon, he spotted another man on a raft and sailed toward him, asking if they could trade goods. In this world, there were no governments or authorities, so people used the old barter system instead of currency, exchanging items to meet their needs. But the man laughed strangely, claiming he came from a nearby city and didn't need anything. The Mariner grew suspicious, only to realize that the man had cunningly stolen fruits from his plants. As the thief prepared to escape, a group of raiders appeared on the horizon, dangerous men who attacked others at sea to steal resources. The man thought the Mariner's boat was too slow and assumed he would be killed, but the Mariner quickly unfurled multiple sails. His boat was built with a unique mechanism, allowing him to drastically increase its speed. He raced ahead so fast that he even overtook the thief's raft and damaged it in revenge, leaving the man behind. The raiders soon caught the thief and shot him dead. Meanwhile, the Mariner continued toward the floating wooden city. After days of traveling, he finally reached its gates, where guards demanded to know his purpose. He explained that he had goods to trade. At first, the guards dismissed his supplies as insignificant, until he revealed a jar filled with soil. Everyone was stunned, because in this water-filled world, soil was more precious than gold or silver. With such valuable resources, the Mariner was finally granted entry into the city. The entire place was built from wood so it could easily float on water, and only those who could provide value were allowed inside. Merchants came here to trade, paying commission to the rulers who built the wooden city. The Mariner carried his jar of soil to a trader, demanding payment. When the merchant saw the soil, he was thrilled, since such things were incredibly rare in this world. He offered coins, but the Mariner demanded double, arguing that something so precious deserved a higher price. The traders needed the soil to grow small plants that produced fruit, making it the best deal they could get, so the merchant paid what he asked. The Mariner profited greatly and bought the supplies he needed. He also purchased pure drinking water, enjoying it more than ever since he was used to filtering and drinking his own urine. With extra coins, he could now drink as much clean water as he wanted. Soon, he noticed a woman named Helen carrying a tomato plant, one that would soon bear fruit. The Mariner approached her and asked to buy it. Helen demanded half the profit he had earned, which was a high price. The Mariner didn't want to pay so much but knew the plant's value and bought it anyway. Helen lived with a young girl named Enola, and they were both poor, so this deal finally gave them some profit. As the Mariner prepared to leave with his resources, some townsfolk brought a young woman from their community to him, insisting he sleep with her so she could become pregnant. They promised him a reward afterward, explaining that their genes had grown weak and they wanted his, believing he carried stronger blood. But the Mariner refused the offer, angering the townspeople. They branded him a terrorist, claiming he had come to spread destruction. He resisted as they swarmed him, until someone grabbed him from behind and noticed something shocking: gills near his ears, like a fish. Realizing he was a mutant, the people decided he was dangerous. For the safety of their community, they trapped him in a cage. The Mariner shouted for release, but no one listened. He was locked up all night like an animal, and by morning, the townspeople dragged his cage to a swampy bog where bodies were disposed of and decomposed into fertilizer. They lowered the Mariner's cage into the mire, and he struggled desperately but couldn't escape. It seemed his death was certain, and his journey had come to an end, until suddenly, the sound of gunfire echoed across the area. It turned out that a massive gang of raiders had attacked the city, causing complete chaos as everyone ran for their lives. But the poor Mariner was still trapped inside his cage. The raiders destroyed everything in their path, leaving no one alive. They were searching for someone who lived in that settlement. Among the townsfolk was a scientist named Glor, who had built a flying machine powered by air and a unique mechanism that allowed it to lift off the ground. Glor wanted to help Helen and Enola escape using it, but when he activated the device, the destruction around them grew worse. In the chaos, Helen and Enola couldn't climb in, and the machine lifted into the air before it was ready, leaving Glor unable to come back down. The raiders kept firing relentlessly. Helen and Enola tried to flee, but when Helen saw the mariner sinking into the bog, she abandoned everything and rushed to save him. She told him that if they freed him, he had to take them with him. The mariner agreed, and she quickly opened the cage. The three of them hurried to a boat, and the mariner steered it away, leaving the burning wooden city far behind. Behind them, the raiders completely overran the settlement. Their leader, Deacon, ordered his men to search for a girl named Enola. That was their true target all along. They believed the tattoo on her back contained a map to the last patch of dry land left on Earth. If they captured her, they could follow it and find beaches or land, which would be the greatest discovery of their time, since no modern human had ever seen land with their own eyes. But they didn't know that Enola was already aboard the mariner's boat. As the mariner sailed with Helen and Enola, he realized there were only enough supplies for 2 people. That meant one of them had to die, otherwise none of them would survive. He believed Enola should be thrown overboard so that he and Helen could live. With their water supplies dwindling, survival seemed impossible. But Helen refused, begging him to let Enola stay for at least a few more days. The mariner, with his soft heart, couldn't deny her. So the 3 of them continued forward with limited resources, heading deeper into the endless ocean. In such situations, where there's nothing but seawater and you can't drink it because it's harmful to the body, survival experts use a simple method to turn saltwater into drinking water. This technique is called a solar still. The process starts by placing a smaller container inside a larger one. The larger container is filled with seawater, and then covered tightly with plastic. A small stone is placed in the center so the plastic forms a dip. As the sun's rays hit the seawater, it evaporates. The vapor rises, condenses on the underside of the plastic, and drips down into the smaller container, collecting as pure drinking water. With this method, seawater can be converted into safe water to drink. If one learns this technique properly, there's no need to worry about water shortages. Even in the middle of the ocean, fresh water can be produced and consumed. Deacon soon realized where the girl Enola had gone, so he sent some of his men to capture her. They had a plane, one that once belonged to military officers but had clearly been stolen. Deacon's men boarded it and quickly reached the mariner's ship, opening fire as soon as they arrived. The mariner's boat took heavy damage, with holes ripping through the large sails, making it harder to control direction. Helen and Enola hid in fear while the mariner went below deck to form a plan. Helen thought he had abandoned them, but he was actually preparing an arrow. Then she spotted a strange gun-like weapon on the boat, not realizing it was meant to shoot a rope-tied arrow. Believing it was a firearm, she aimed at the circling plane and fired. The arrow lodged into the aircraft, but the rope pulled violently, breaking parts of the boat, including the sail supports. If the plane wasn't stopped soon, the entire ship would be destroyed. The mariner rushed up just in time to cut the rope, saving the boat from being dragged apart. Deacon's men, also damaged, retreated with their plane. Furious, the mariner scolded Helen for acting without his permission, warning her never to touch the boat again. To teach a harsh lesson, he even cut off some of Helen's and Enola's hair, reminding them that everything on board had been collected with great difficulty. Helen and Enola sat quietly after that, obeying him, knowing he had far more experience surviving at sea. Hours later, while continuing their journey, they spotted a lone man on a small boat. Helen suggested approaching him, hoping to trade for food. At first, the mariner was suspicious and reluctant, but after Helen insisted, he steered toward the stranger. The thin man welcomed them and offered to trade. But instead of goods, he opened a jar that contained not supplies, but a piece of paper. Paper was incredibly rare in this era, since wood no longer existed to make it. The mariner was shocked and wanted it immediately, knowing it could be exchanged for a fortune. The thin man agreed, on one condition: he wanted Helen in return. Strangely, the mariner didn't protest. He quietly accepted the paper and told the man he could take Helen for a while. The stranger led Helen below deck and immediately tried to assault her, something the mariner didn't realize. He thought the man simply wanted to talk to her. How could the mariner be so dumb? But before the thin man could actually hurt Helen, the mariner came inside. He told the man he didn't need to do anything more, and Helen, terrified, ran upstairs. The stranger pulled out a knife and threatened to kill the mariner and take the entire boat, not realizing the mariner's true strength. The mariner brutally beat him, lifted him, and slammed him down, killing him on the spot. After saving Helen's life, she began to feel attracted to him, realizing that beneath his rough exterior, he was actually a gentleman. From that point, she was certain she could trust him. As their journey continued, their resources kept running low, not just water but food as well. To solve this, the mariner grabbed a sharp spear and dove into the ocean. Helen and Enola were confused until a massive hybrid sea creature appeared. Knowing its weak point, the mariner killed it and brought a piece of its flesh back to the boat. For the first time in days, they ate a real meal, and Helen and Enola were grateful, deciding to stay with him. When Enola mentioned she couldn't swim, the mariner was shocked, since in this world everyone had adapted to water, some even growing gills, just like him. Over time, the three of them grew close, and the mariner even taught Enola how to swim. The distance between them lessened, and Helen especially began to like him, though she kept her feelings quiet. Soon, they came across a floating trading outpost where people usually exchanged supplies. Thinking it was a good chance to restock, the mariner sailed toward it, only to discover that Deacon and his men had already taken control of the place. As soon as they saw the mariner's boat, they attacked. With sharp skill, the mariner turned his boat and sped away, having repaired it enough to escape. Though they got away, he was troubled. Why were they chasing them so relentlessly? Finally, he realized it was because of Enola. Angry, he demanded answers from Helen. She confessed that Enola's tattoo was actually a map leading to the last island on Earth, the only piece of dry land left. At first, the mariner refused to believe it, convinced the world was completely drowned with no trees, no forests, not even soil. But Helen reminded him that when they first found Enola, she had rare dirt in her hands, proving the island existed. Determined to show Helen the truth, the mariner took her beneath the water. Since he could breathe underwater but she could not, he gave her a circular piece of plastic to help her breathe and then pulled her deeper and deeper into the ocean. It was clear that massive buildings and entire cities now lay submerged beneath the ocean. The water level had risen so high that even the tallest mountains and the largest islands had not survived. The soil and other items the mariner had at the beginning were things he had collected from the deep. At this point, even Helen began to doubt whether any island truly existed. But as soon as they surfaced, they found that Deacon and his men had already arrived. Deacon captured the mariner and Helen, demanding to know where Enola was. Though Enola had been hiding silently by the side of the boat, neither the mariner nor Helen betrayed her presence, even as Deacon's men pressed them for answers. But Enola, young as she was, couldn't bear the thought of them being killed because of her. With trembling courage, she stepped out of hiding on her own. The moment Deacon's men saw her, they pounced, yanking her close and roughly examining the tattoo on her back. Their eyes lit up as they realized it was the key they had been searching for all along. Deacon's voice, cold and ruthless, cut through the air. "Take the girl. Kill the others." Without hesitation, his men prepared to execute the mariner and Helen. Thinking fast, the mariner grabbed Helen's hand and dove with her straight into the dark waters. Bullets tore through the surface above them, muffled by the depths. Helen began to panic, her lungs burned as the salt water pressed in. The mariner, his body adapted for the sea, pressed his mouth to hers, breathing life and oxygen into her lungs. He guided her deeper, where the enemy wouldn't dare to follow. When they finally surfaced, gasping for air, the nightmare grew worse. Their boat was nothing more than shattered wreckage floating aimlessly on the waves. And Enola was gone. She had been taken. The mariner, uncharacteristically shaken, turned to Helen. His voice cracked with guilt. "I couldn't save her." For the first time, Helen saw not the hardened drifter she once distrusted, but a man capable of regret and compassion. Her anger softened, and in that moment, there was a quiet, unspoken bond between them. He wasn't just a survivor, he was someone who cared. But there was no time to grieve. Enola was still alive, and she needed them. Among the broken remains of their boat, the mariner noticed a waterlogged magazine, the kind the thin man had carried. Its pages spoke of myths, of lands untouched by the sea, and of an island that many thought was only a legend. Deacon's people had been chasing it blindly, but now, for the first time, the mariner began to believe the impossible. Just maybe, dry land did exist. Yet, belief wasn't enough. Their vessel was gone, and the endless ocean stretched in all directions. How could they even hope to follow? Just when despair began to creep in, the buzzing of an engine echoed across the waves. A shadow grew above them. It was Glower, piloting his strange flying craft, swooping down like salvation from the skies. He pulled them aboard, his grin fierce. They were safe, for now. But the mariner couldn't rest. His mind burned with one thought, Enola. He had to bring her back. Without waiting for plans or reinforcements, he struck out alone, infiltrating Deacon's colossal warship, a rusted oil tanker converted into a floating fortress. Inside, an entire army of ragged men obeyed Deacon's every command. To keep their faith, Deacon lied, boasting that he had already deciphered the map from Enola's tattoo. The crew roared with excitement, pushing the massive ship faster toward an imagined destination, never realizing their leader was bluffing. Amid the chaos, the mariner appeared, rising like a phantom out of the shadows. Armed, grim, and determined, he demanded one thing: give me the girl. The horde surged forward, but the mariner was ready. In a single motion, he pulled a flare and hurled it into one of the tanker's massive oil reservoirs. The world shook with the deafening roar of an explosion. Fire erupted through the belly of the ship, devouring men and steel alike. Panic spread as the vessel became a floating inferno. Through smoke and flames, the mariner fought his way to Enola. He found her bound but alive, terrified as the ship's walls cracked and groaned. He freed her, but just as they tried to escape, Deacon made his move. With Enola in his grasp, he climbed into a plane perched on the deck, hoping to flee before the ship was consumed. The mariner leapt after them, grabbing a cable and hooking it to the aircraft. The engines roared, the plane fought for the sky, but the line held. The strain tore the machine apart. With a thunderous crash, the plane slammed back onto the deck, fire licking at its wings. The mariner pulled Enola free of the wreckage, signaling frantically for help as flames devoured the sinking ship. Just then, Glower and Helen appeared in their wooden skiff, steering through the churning waves. A rope was tossed down, whipping in the wind. With Enola clinging tightly to him, the mariner climbed, every muscle straining as the fiery tanker groaned and slipped beneath the sea. They had made it, or so it seemed. A sudden weight jerked the rope. Deacon, bloodied but alive, had clawed his way up from the wreckage and now clung to the line with feral desperation. The mariner shook him loose, and Deacon plummeted back into the water, yet fate wasn't done with him. He landed in a drifting motorboat, eyes wild with rage. Snatching up a weapon, he aimed directly at Enola. The shot rang out. The bullet struck her shoulder, spinning her off the skiff and back into the sea. Helen screamed her name as two of Deacon's men tore across the waves in another motorboat, closing in on the wounded girl. For the mariner, time slowed. He couldn't just stand by. Securing an elastic rope to his leg, he hurled himself from the skiff, slicing through the air like a spear. The ocean swallowed him, and in the chaos of foaming water and roaring engines, he reached Enola first. With one arm, he pulled her up from the depths, shielding her fragile body. Deacon's men bore down on them at full speed, their boats converging in a deadly triangle. At the last second, the mariner kicked off, dragging Enola clear. The three attackers crashed into one another with catastrophic force, their boats erupting in a blinding explosion that sent fire and debris raining across the waves. When the smoke cleared, nothing was left but silence and drifting wreckage. At last, aboard Glower's flying machine, they were safe. Enola rested, her wound tended, while Glower revealed the truth he had been keeping. He had studied the tattoo on Enola's back long before and had finally deciphered its meaning. It was not just ink, it was a map, a guide to salvation. For hours, they soared above the endless blue, following the tattoo's directions. Tension hung heavy until, suddenly, a small bird landed on the edge of the craft. The mariner froze. A bird meant land. His heart pounded as the haze on the horizon parted, revealing something no one thought possible: an island. Vast, green forests stretched toward the sky, and firm ground gleamed in the sunlight. They landed swiftly, stumbling out onto earth. The mariner knelt, running his hands through grass and soil, staring in disbelief. Trees swayed in the breeze, leaves whispering a song he had never heard before. Together, they ventured inland, where they discovered a weathered hut. Inside, they found skeletons carefully placed, long at rest. Enola's face fell as Glower gently explained, these were likely her parents. They must have known they couldn't survive here alone, so they had placed her on a boat and sent her away, hoping she would live. Now, she had finally returned. For the survivors, this was the miracle they had been chasing all their lives. Humanity had found its home again. They decided to stay, to rebuild among the trees and soil. Days passed, filled with the strange comfort of solid ground and fresh air. Yet, the mariner grew restless. Though he loved Helen and had come to care deeply for Enola, the land felt foreign beneath his feet. His body, changed by the sea, longed for the waves. The ocean was not just where he lived, it was a part of him. One quiet morning, he confessed his love to Helen, his voice low but certain. She held his gaze, understanding the choice he had already made. With the rising sun at his back, the mariner set sail once more, his small boat gliding out into the endless horizon. On the shore, Helen and Enola stood hand in hand, watching his figure shrink into the distance, knowing he belonged to the water as much as they now belonged to the land. And with that, the story of the mariner came to an end, one man destined to wander the seas, leaving behind the hope of a new beginning on the world's last island.